Usyk will
He's gonna be
quit.
taken to school.
Usyk will quit.
He will
You're
eat so
wrong.
many
You're
jabs.
going to get the shock of your life.
No, it's better to burn out than fade away.
There we go.
He is not elite yet. Tell me one elite fighter he's beat.
You want to see what the Silk said?
Yes.
I don't know whether to float or gloat.
What size feet is he, Ben?
Good evening and welcome to Sugar, Silk and Stretch, probably the best boxing podcast in the world. My name is Ben Doughty.
My name is Michael Silkolajide.
And we are gathered here today to pontificate on the massive domestic dust-up taking place principally at Wembley Stadium tomorrow, featuring Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois. Silk, I've got to say straight away at the outset, and I don't want to be an old killjoy. I don't want this to dominate the kind of taste of the show. But as far as I'm concerned, it's nothing more than a good domestic heavyweight clash. The only world heavyweight champion worth taking seriously is Alexander Usyk. Just because someone's got pressure on him politically to give a belt up and he gifts it to someone, it doesn't make you a champion. But this is a massive fight. The weigh-in was in Trafalgar Square a few hours ago, and it looks like the old school days of, Muhammad Ali and Henry Cooper kind of crowd scenes,
It looked exciting. It looked really exciting.
Yeah, which can only be good for boxing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you see that many people generating the energy, like putting their energy out into something like this, I mean, that's what people, especially people that haven't experienced boxing before, they see that. To them, that's as big as anything they've ever experienced before. So I think it's absolutely great for boxing, and I love the fact that both of these two fighters are clean, hard fighting. You know what I mean? Proud fighters. I like that.
We've had some interesting kind of shenanigans go on since the public workout on Wednesday, which I did attend at the OVO Arena in Wembley. And I know you're not obsessively locked into British boxing, and there's some of these characters that some of the regulars take for granted that you might not be overly familiar with. But Dubois is trained by a gentleman called Don Charles, who for many years was Derek Chisora's trainer as well. So he's figured in big world title fights before, the likes of Klitschko versus Chisora, Fury 3 times, versus Chisora. He had Chisora for the David Hay fight, which was not a world title fight, but it was a massive and controversial fight that took place in West Ham ground in London back in 2012. So Don is an integral figure in British boxing. Now the thing is, Silk, he wasn't there at the public workout. Now my friend Spencer Fearon, who I'm sure you are familiar with, who's a bit of a kind of he was a relatively average pugilist, talented, but he was a former Southern area title challenger 3 times. But he has such a large personality and style and profile that he's managed to parlay that into more stardom since he retired from boxing than he ever had while he was boxing. So Spencer is known as a talking head, and he's very popular for these kind of clickbait channels because he always gives us a good copy. And he excelled himself on Wednesday. He said, I ain't seen Don Charles all week. He said, and I know because there's a rift between Daniel Dubois' father, a fellow called Stan, apparently. He used to be called Dave, but now he goes by Stan. He said, he has got a rift with Don Charles. And then he went on to say the father practices black magic. He said he's a scumbag and a fake. He practices black magic. He said no workers of iniquity will defeat Anthony Joshua. So he tried to bring spirituality into it, okay? And then he also said, he's a black magic worshipper. Then he said, somebody had told him Carl Froch says if AJ loses, then he's finished. And he said, I don't care what Carl Froch thinks or says. He says, tell him to keep supporting Tommy Robinson, who's a famous right-wing kind of zealot over around here. He said, and the English Defence League was seen as a racist organisation, an anti-ethnics organisation in England. And he said, can't no EDL man tell me nothing. So Spencer's had Carl Froch texting him saying, say that to my face, bring it on. And he also got a legal letter last night, which he showed to me, from Daniel Dubois and Stan Dubois' solicitors, ordering him to cease and desist. They said, remove any reference to the interviews, the video, apologise, don't do it again, and do not contact them except to apologise. So it's been quite a lot of fun, the build-up, Silk.
Wow.
I don't know what thoughts you have.
You stated so many things. I don't even know where I enter into. I mean, there's so many things. There's
black magic accusations, personal accusations. But here's the thing. He said that there's a rift with Don Charles, and he said that what he said, right? He says that do you remember when when Dubois lost to Usyk, and I know you think he should have beat Usyk because you believe it was on the belt line, no problem, and you think
No, I did.
he should
No,
have
no,
got up.
no. I did not say he should have beat Usyk. I didn't say that. I said the punch was a legitimate punch, but I didn't say that Dubois won the fight because obviously when they started fighting again, Usyk beat him and stopped him legitimately.
But you, all right, without getting stuck on this, then just quickly, can I ask you, just for clarity, do you think Usyk would have got up if he'd had to, and he wouldn't have been allowed to milk it? He'd have just got up earlier. Yes.
Yeah, I think if he had to,
Okay.
I think he could have. Yes.
So you don't see him as the uncrowned champion based on that. You just think the rules were misapplied on the night. Cool.
Yeah,
No problem.
that's what I think. Yeah.
No problem at all. All right. So after the Usyk fight, according to my friend Spencer, he went to the Dubois house for a meeting, and the father said, "I want to get rid of Don." Yeah, want to get rid of Don Charles.
That's his trainer.
Yes, his trainer. Who
but
kind
the son doesn't want to get rid of him. The father does.
Well, yes, that was the way it was represented, according to Spencer, to me privately, and the interviews he did this week with the social media channels. Now, he said he spoke up for Don and said, Don has done really wonders for your son. He's reinvented him, and you've got to keep him on board. But he said that the dad wanted rid of him, so that's what he was saying. So suddenly, when Don got a head cold this week and decided to stay away from the team, that Dubois turned up at the Yes, Dubois turned up at the public workout working with a padman called Kieran Farrell, ex-pro fighter who does work with Daniel anyway. This Don's absence, coupled with Spencer's verbiage to the channels, got people thinking that there was a rift between Don Charles and the father, for instance, which may have led to a change of trainers on biggest fight of his life on the week of.
Yeah.
But it's not true. Don Charles said today, and I know you saw the picture because we got into it about who is he, and I said, "Oh, you should." I only deal with people who know who Don Charles is, like Iceman John Scully, right? He said I had a head cold, and there's some people who've been spreading rumours, vicious lies. I don't think Spencer's too popular in some quarters, to be honest with you, because Frank Warren was complaining about it too, saying it's a load of rubbish. What Spencer Fear right now, and what's it got to do with him? And he's ruffled a few feathers this week. But to recap, Don Charles will be in the corner tomorrow night, I believe. He sounded ill on the phone today to talk sports, but he's going to be in the corner, I think, tomorrow night, regardless.
And he wasn't. They're saying he wasn't, or he's saying he wasn't in the corner because he didn't want to pass his sickness on to the fighter.
Yeah, he said I stayed away from my fighter this week. Imagine if I'd given it to him. He says, "Well, I can't give it to him on Saturday because the symptoms won't kick in until the next day anyway."
Yeah, that's true. So I mean, you can't argue that point. At the same time, you kind of have to think to yourself, just the timing is just so, I don't know, specific. Like it's almost like the kid. What does the kid say? That's what I like to know. What does Dubois say? I mean, because you have your father. You kind of through my history of boxing, I know that when fathers get offended, they tend to always want to go home, and they want to take their sons with them. And it's unfortunate that they can't separate themselves from their sons and look for it. And they may have been insulted, but their son wasn't really insulted, and their son shouldn't have to take.
No, but do you understand as well? That father was insulted by Spencer Fearon, who's not part of the team. You understand?
Yeah.
Spencer's, yeah.
Spencer's a part of the team, but the father.
No, he's not part of the team. Spencer is not a part of the team.
Okay, yeah, but the father is getting criticism, right? And he's saying, so the father's getting criticism. So the father says, "I don't want you to talk to him because he's not good to me." That's wrong.
What are you talking about? Talk to who?
Well, you're saying that with the publicity, with the building up to the fight, that Dubois' father was insulted by
Spencer
Fearon, right?
Yeah.
And his trainer. You said his trainer. You said his trainer has. Okay, so Spencer is one thing, right?
And Don Charles is another. Yes.
And Don Charles is another. Now we're talking about Don Charles. Now Don Charles has separated himself from
because he got a cold
training camp for a reason, and you think there's two reasons why. It's either because he's sick or because he had a rift with the father.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And either way, it doesn't have anything to do with Spencer.
Okay, so so it has nothing to do with Spencer. So that's what I'm saying. I'm like, so Don Charles is. he shouldn't be catching flack over this. And a lot of people don't know whether it's because he's legitimately sick or he's taking space away because the father kind of wanted to make him an outlier. He wants to push him away out of the
I fully believe he had a virus. He sounded totally like someone who was off work with the flu when he was on the phone today. I don't think there's anything to see here, Silk. Spencer was the one who said there's a rift. I know there is, and the guy practices black magic and everything else. And Spencer's my brother. Okay, I love Spencer to death. But
Spencer said there's black magic.
Yes, we've been through this. We've been through all of this. Spencer said.
What I'm asking you is, why would he say that? Has he seen it?
I don't know. You think perhaps he has, but from what Frank Warren said this too, right? He said the beef between Spencer Fearon and Daniel Dubois' dad is based over something that Spencer made an introduction. I believe it was a lawyer. He thinks he was due to get a percentage or some money. He was due to get a drink, as we say in Cockney parlance. We give you a drink. I'll look after you. I'll give you a little kickback. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he didn't get it, or he didn't get what he thought he should have got. So that's why Frank Warren is saying that Spencer Fearon has a resentment against Dubois' father. So consequently, he decided to set the cat amongst the pigeons, saying there's trouble in the camp. You get it? And then he alluded to things like black magic and everything else.
Does
then
that sound like something Spencer would do to you?
It's not inconceivable, to be completely honest with you. Not inconceivable. I wanted Spencer on the show tonight, by the way, but he says he's doing something for ITV or something. So I wanted him here. I know he got a legal letter last night, which he showed to me. And he encouraged me to publicise the fact that he'd had a cease and desist letter from some legal firm representing Dubois, father and son.
So that kind of like legitimizes him in the controversy anyway. It gets, he's a part of the controversy. He's a part of the energy of the fight, and that certainly helps him in terms of, I guess, publicity.
Well, I know that the reel I put up of it on Facebook has got about 16,000 views. And that translates to money, because you get paid for reels now.
Yeah.
So,
I can't say one way or the other because I don't know Spencer to know whether he's telling the truth or not. So, I mean, it's really hard for me to give an opinion on the subject because I wouldn't want to give an uninformed opinion.
Heaven forbid.
That's the strongest.
So should we move on to the fight itself?
Well, we can say that. I mean, it's how does that affect his camp? You know what I mean? Do you think that affects Dubois' camp at all?
I don't know because I believe it's only been this week, and as you know well, the last week is for tapering off, where they don't do a whole lot.
Cruising. They don't do a lot, but this is where the psychology of a fighter comes in. Right. Yeah. So there was the physical preparedness. And of course, there's always the psychological attached. But once you get to this stage where now you're cruising, you are ready. If you're not ready now, you're never going to be ready. And so you're cruising towards the fight. So now it's the little things that you do, the tightening up, you pay attention even more to your nutrition. You check your weight and all those things are coming on.
Yeah. Although heavyweights don't have to do that, do they?
Yeah. Well, they do and they don't. I think they have an idea of what. I mean, they don't just go blind into it. They do check their weight and say, "Well, this is where I've always been able to perform my best at before. I don't want to come in too light. I don't want to come in too heavy."
You know what? You say that, and I understand that historically. Yes, I think less so today. I really do. By the way, for what it's worth, Dubois weighed 248. Pounds and 6 ounces, and Joshua weighed 252 pounds and 5 ounces.
Yeah, it's always hard for me to get a sense of how big Dubois is for some reason, because at some points he looks really small compared to other guys, and at other times he looks, like sizable, but he never seems to outsize anybody. He seems like a smaller heavyweight whenever I've looked at him in a fight.
And he's 250.
Yeah, but 250 is huge. In terms of a weight you have to move around.
Yeah. But
and what do you like his engine?
Well, this is what I would say, Silk. If I was making a case for Dubois, I would say his last 3 fights have been more useful to him and have seasoned him a lot better than Anthony Joshua's last 3 fights have him. Let's examine them. In his last 3 fights, Usyk, and he does appear to have come of age and got that kind of not man strength, but psychological man strength he appears to have got. Mm-hmm. He fought Usyk, Then he fought Miller. That was a war of attrition that he won by stoppage. It was a good campaign from him. And then he fought Hrgovic, which is also a good fight, which he had to eat a lot of right hands early doors, which doesn't bode well. But he won that one by stoppage too. So if you look at his fight, he performed with honour against Usyk. Then he beat Miller and Hrgovic. Contrast that with Joshua has beaten Hellenius, where he looked awful until he found the money shot. Then Wallin, who was quite passive, I thought, Joey Gomarch's man, and then he knocked out an MMA fighter called Ngannou. So I think Dubois has had the better season in competition in his last 3 bouts, certainly.
But does
And I do
that
like his
matter?
engine, yeah.
But does that matter? You're talking about the physicality of it. When they both are kind of like in their top of their physical abilities, it's what you do. Like, how psychologically does that affect? Do you think Dubois approaches the fight psychologically better than Anthony Joshua does because of those wins? How does
I
that
think they've
play
given
in
him
with
self-belief, but they've given him self-belief, but then Anthony Joshua is probably full of confidence right now anyway, because people are telling the story of this rejuvenated AJ who's finally found his groove, and he has his maturity and experience, and he has the best trainer for him. People believe in the best
Well,
chemistry in camp
I think the
with
trainer,
Ben
yeah,
Davison.
I think in Ben Davidson, and that he's got somebody that is a good fit for him, that obviously knows Anthony's strengths and weaknesses, has watched, has studied, and he's, he may be, like, based on what he's done, I guess, recently. And again, over the MMA fighter, it doesn't mean it's a boxer, but you tend to think he told him the right thing, how to get rid of that problem really early. And so that gives me belief in a lot of other things. Like, he can obviously get him ready for other situations.
Yeah,
He
and I
didn't
know
make
Ben
more. He
Davison.
didn't make more out of Ngannou than he should have. Like, whereas in the past, that's what happened with Ngannou. Like, against Tyson Fury, Fury gave him too much. Just respected him.
He
too
did
much.
absolutely too much, But I know Ben Davison. I've known him for a few years now, and I've seen him in the gym working with fighters. And he is just a real boxing guy. He studies it deeply. He's very meticulous about what he does. So
And he
that's
never worked with Joshua before. They'd never worked before.
Since when?
No, I'm asking you. Has Joshua and Ben Davidson had never worked before?
At what point are you saying?
Oh,
At what point
at
are you
any
asking
point
me?
in his career, is what I'm saying. Because I've heard Ben Davidson's name brought up a few times.
Yeah, because he trained Tyson Fury and Billy Joe Saunders and a bunch of guys.
All right.
Yeah, but this is the fights he's been with Joshua for. That is the start of their relationship, which is, you know what? He was actually still with what's his name? He was still with the guy in Houston, Derek James, I believe, when he fought Hellenius. He's only been with Davidson for Wallin and Ngannou. That's 2 fights, okay? Which both he looked $1 million in, okay? The other guy that's with him as part of the team is a fella called Barry Smith, who I've known for a very long time. I used to use Barry to hand up to me. He used to do hands and cuts if anybody got cut, and used to help me out with fighters that I had. Barry was just that typical jobbing trainer who had his own little stable of fighters in it. And Barry, he struck it rich. He struck the big time. He and Ben Davison had a rapport. Ben liked him, and Ben invited him to come and help him with the team. And now Barry's in the big time. Which is nice to see. It's nice to see because it's just a guy that you've shared many a conversation with in the break time while waiting for a PT to start or waiting for a bit of sparring for a fighter. And then now he's in the real spotlight, which is kind of cool,
Yeah. He's come a long way. He's stuck with it, and he obviously has a methodology that works for him, and it agrees with Anthony Joshua's.
I'm talking. You talking about Barry Smith?
Oh no, I'm not. I was talking about Ben
Davison.
Ben Davison. I don't know Barry Smith that well at all.
No.
Yeah.
I'll introduce you sometime. But what was I going to say? I'm sure if Chrissy Morton is watching this, she'll be thinking this is funny as well because she knows Barry well. All right. So, like I say, Silk, if I was making a case for Dubois, I would say he's been more battle hardened in his recent fights. And there is something about it. Like you asked me about his engine. I think if it comes down to who guesses first, then he may be in a good position if that's the case. A lot of people are talking about it's a case of who lands first. Do you see it as that kind of fight? Who lands first?
No, the way I think it's on paper, it's tightly contested, and in the ring, it certainly could be that. I I look at Anthony Joshua as like a long range sniper. Like everything he throws, he's throwing with a purpose, and there's nothing superfluous. Everything has its point and purpose. And he's not going to be throwing. He's not going to be letting his hands go any more than he has to. He's not trying to do I don't think it's going to be a points thing with him. I think he's going to do like one of those destruct and destroy by, more obviously not Arguello, but Arguello-ish. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's going to be very pinpoint accurate. He's not going to be wasting shots. It's not scatter shot. It's not AK-47. It's like a sniper. It's like, okay, he's measuring up and he's going to be throwing that right hand with precision and accuracy. Everything he's throwing is not going to be a waste, because he knows that when he hits, there's definitely going to be a very quick reaction. And if he does land solidly, and to say he wouldn't is kind of crazy, because it's not like Dubois has any defensive inclinations that would tell you Joshua won't hit him. At the same time, Joshua himself, I don't really see him as having a leak-proof defense either.
No.
So does it take it down to this is kind of like a who lands first kind of thing?
That's what I asked you. That's how we started your bit.
Oh,
I asked you the very same question. I asked you twice.
Well, less eloquently.
You've gone on a discourse and you've come back with the same question 5 minutes later.
Less eloquently.
You're priceless.
You have to speak to me with a certain eloquation in order for me to understand. You're just dropping it to me like,
I said, this is, let me recap. Let's rewind. I said, you talk about engine. I said, if it comes down to engine, maybe Dubois is well situated, because I do think his stamina has improved and his self-belief, I said, but many people are saying it'll be a matter of who lands first. I said, do you see it that way, Silk? Who lands first? And then you went off on this highly eloquent discourse.
Tangent.
And then said to me, and then you said to me, will it be tangent? Then you said to me, will it be a question of who lands first? I'm like, sorry, I asked you that, man. I asked you.
No, but I wasn't asking you. I was really making a point to the people that are listening.
Okay.
That was really it. But I tend to think, wow, it really is a pick 'em fight in a lot of ways. And you can't really go with Joshua based on his fight with Ngannou, because Ngannou is not a professional boxer.
No.
But for some reason, I just see Joshua being able to get off first and get off more accurately. And do I think Dubois can withstand it? I don't think so. Here's the thing that plays a big part in this, and probably a bigger part than what we give credit. These two have sparred before, right?
They have, and there's been a lot made out of what happened.
And sorry?
Yes, and there's been a lot made out of what happened. There's been much news and gossip resultant from whatever happened when they sparred, yes.
Yeah, and from what I understand, Dubois had Anthony Joshua hurt, like bad.
That's what everybody says. But you know as well as I do, Silk, the gym rumors, sometimes they're true and sometimes they're not true. You must know a whole folkloric load of
sure,
tales.
But Dubois has never brought him up himself.
It's been mentioned a lot over the years that he supposedly had him on the verge of being out. I've heard that, but
yeah, but Dubois has never said anything himself. No one has broached that question at a press conference or anything.
Yeah, of course they have. Yeah, they have.
Okay,
I can't remember what he said, but I can't remember what he said. I think he said it happened. It went down the way. I think he said, he had him on Queer Street, I believe. But what
on Queer Street, or like, did he have him buried? Did he have him down or on Queer Street?
I don't think he was down. I don't think they were saying. I think they just said Queer Street. Maybe they said he was knocked down. I don't recall. I just know people were trying to say that he had him in trouble in sparring. But one thing you've got to bear in mind about Dubois is he's not the most verbose, eloquent guy. People say he's autistic. He's on the spectrum. He's got something of the man-child about him, and he's not the most confident or eloquent or most effusive guy verbally. So when you say, as he said this and said that, he doesn't say much.
Mm-hmm.
Remember Sonny Liston when he said, all I know is a few words and I've said them all.
Yeah. Psychologically, that plays a lot into this fight. I do believe that plays a lot to this fight. Yeah, I mean, you never forget. I remember my first like two amateur fights when I got really. Listen, even when I've in my even in sparring as an amateur, I can remember who buzzed me and who didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
And,
yeah.
and I can remember the experiences, and they stay with you. It doesn't matter how many fights you had.
Oh, you know when someone did it. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's kind of
um,
like it's. Listen, we remember trauma better than we remember good times. It's just the way human beings are
the,
based.
bo-
Because
the,
if you remember trauma, you remember you don't want to do that again. You don't want to experience that again.
the body keeps the score.
Exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
that trauma, Anthony Joshua is fully aware of, and that's going to play a part in the fight on how he and his training on how he trained for this. Like, does he want to get caught with that again? No, of course he doesn't. So he's going to prepare a certain way and do certain things. And is Dubois the same fighter? Yeah, he pretty much is. He doesn't look like maybe he's in better shape, but again, he hasn't shown any defensive inclinations that make me say, wow, he's more of a complete fighter. Like you talked about him winning some fights, and he's got the better, momentum going into this fight. But I can't see him doing anything better than he did the first time I saw him fight.
And you know what? So when you talk about his defensive frailties, I don't know if you remember the Hergovich fight vividly, but
Mm-hmm.
do you remember how many right hands he was eating for the
Yeah.
first 3 or 4 rounds from Hergovich?
Yes.
He was eating them like it was a tough man contest bet that they said, I bet you can't. You know, like in the old days, when they
Yeah.
say, you hit
Yeah.
me, and then if I can
Yeah.
stand your blood, then
Yeah.
it's my turn.
Yeah.
While it was impressive that he absorbed those shots like it was not like he was eating popcorn and then went on to
Yeah.
stop the guy,
Yeah.
that's great. But I just don't see it working out so well against Anthony Joshua.
No.
If he gets hit so easily by the right hand, I think it's going to
Yeah.
be more conclusively problematic. You know?
Yeah. So it's almost like with this fight. No, I 100% agree with you on that. And like again, now it comes down to who has a quicker release. You know what I mean? Like who can let go first, and who's going to get there first is
And I think
basically.
Joshua's probably got the edge in hand speed. Did you think?
Yeah, I do think he has not only in hand speed. I mean, I think like he has more like the confidence to let the punch go and knowing like there's no question when he's punching. Not anymore. He's not questioning whether he can hit the guy or not like he was against Usyk. There's no question there. He's like he knows he's going to hit and he'll let the punch go. And that is so important in a fighter's arsenal to have that. And it's not even like it's confidence. It's just a matter of it's a reflex.
Yeah. Raymond Hales says this could well be a mismatch. Daniel Dubois has no head movement and won't even keep his hands up. So
yeah. If he wants to make this fight on who's got bigger heart, I don't think it's going to be a good fight for him. But if he does, and I don't see him as a reflex. It's just so hard for me to see how many ways he can win unless, Anthony Joshua kind of like gives him.
I think you made a good point earlier I think you suggested that there's nothing in Daniel Dubois' boxing makeup and vocabulary which would make Anthony Joshua gun shy. Because when you make people doubt throwing punches, like you talk about the master of Floyd Mayweather, for instance, but Usyk can certainly do that too and make you second guess yourself.
Yes.
There's nothing about Dubois that suggests he'll make him gun shy or unsure of when to launch his shots. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and that's why. Yeah, I don't know if. It's interesting because I've seen Dubois, and in watching Dubois in his last few fights and even earlier, I never saw the magic. You know what I mean? He looks very like
pedestrian,
very
Frank
mechanical.
Bruno-esque. Some people have said. Some people have said he looks Frank Bruno-esque. Some people have said.
Yeah, that's pretty close. How do they compare in terms of size? Bruno was bigger.
Well, do you know? No, Bruno wasn't bigger. Bruno was more.
He made way less, but he was bigger stature-wise.
I don't think so. I've seen Dubois next to Larry Holmes, and he dwarfed Larry Holmes.
No,
I'll find you the picture, my friend.
Wow.
I wish I could put it up now. I was guess what? I'm just going to show off now, like I'm some kind of A-lister. Okay, I was at a Tag Heuer Muhammad Ali when Tag Heuer did a Muhammad Ali watch. You might remember it. I went to the launch of that, right? And there was Dubois was there, Larry Holmes was there, Jerry Halliwell from the Spice Girls was there as well, just for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Remember them?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I
So
remember.
I saw a punch out contest between Larry Holmes and Jerry Halliwell. They both had to hit this bag. It was a bag that, you know, it monitored your speed and how many punches you were throwing. Larry Holmes had a go in it, and so did Jerry Halliwell, and there was some kind of adjudication, as I recall. But that night that was the young up and coming Daniel Dubois. It was only 2017 when this occurred, and there was pictures of him with Holmes, and he looked a lot bigger than Larry. And I promise I'll find you the picture after the show.
Really?
I'll post it. Yeah.
Well, so I mean, Larry goes about 6'3".
Yeah, and Larry would often weigh about 220, 225 in his peak, right?
But and
Bruno was
they
more of
would
a
do more cardiovascular based anaerobic work than fighters of today, anyway.
Yeah, I think they would, and they certainly worked. I do believe they worked on skills more. I was saying to you the other day, you look at Tommy Morrison versus Razor Ruddock when they were both seen to be a little bit past noon, over the hump, but their skills and variety was it just seemed naturally default level advanced compared to a lot of heavyweights that you see today. And I do think, Silk, you know, and you've said it many times, that I do think there is more of a fixation these days with strength and conditioning and science. And less of a work on good old fashioned boxing skills, fundamentals, and generalship, and the secret tricks of the trade. And you know, you spoke about it the other day that the madness of Instagram today, when there's all these people saying this is how to do the hop pivot, and then don't do it like this, big red cross, and then do it like this, big green tick, and like, you know, and it's like a minefield of misinformation, isn't it? Frank Lotierzo said the other day on Facebook, he said, boxing knowledge is passed from individual to individual by people who know what they're talking about. And there is a plethora today of all these charlatans, but with their terms like the hammer hook, the shovel hook, the back step shuffle. And it's become like a crazy situation, eh?
It really has. And I think that's because, you know, I mean, boxing is untamed. It is absolutely untamed. It doesn't have one overriding theory of how to do it right. And because of that, anyone can just come in, any charlatan, anybody that just, you know what I mean, can come in and say they know this works, and they can justify any move based off, I don't even know what, just because, you know, and even naturally, people don't give boxing the respect that it deserves. Like, they just think every man thinks they can punch, and every man thinks, you know, if I get in the ring, I can knock someone out, and especially if I get angry and
I'll give you one, right, Silk, before I answer Raymond Hale. Raymond Hales has obviously tuned in a bit later because he just said, what are your thoughts on the Don Charles stuff? Is there any truth that there's a fallout? Without being a dick about this, Raymond, I think you're going to have to watch the start of the show where we did discuss it. I'll recap very quickly. I think Don Charles was simply ill with a head cold with a virus. He certainly sounded ill today when he spoke on the phone to TalkSport, and I don't think there's anything in it at all, and I think he'll be there tomorrow night. What I was going to say to you, Silk, there was a guy on my page, he watches the show sometimes, his name's David something, can't remember it now, but he's a Scottish fella, ex-amateur, and he was slagging Broner off, and I said, you're slagging Broner off, I said, but it felt a bit disrespectful what he was saying. And to me, Broner's a bit of an easy whipping boy. Everybody rags on him when really, I don't mind him. I like yourself, I'm too contrary just to slag off the person everybody slags off. Like even with Don King or anybody else, all right? So I said, when he said that he said, you know, remember Larry Merchant said to Adrian Broner, you're 3-4 in your last 7, and Broner said, yeah, but I'd be 7-0 against you. And I said, and I suggested the same thing to this David, whatever his name is, I've forgotten it for some reason. I said, you know, he'd be 7-0 against you, and he said, no, mate, I'm 16 stone, which is 230 pounds or something. He said, and I had like 10 amateur fights. He's not going 7-0 against me. I tell you what, I bet you he fucking would. I bet you he would, Silk. Right?
People just do not get it.
I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but do you remember Sugar Ray Leonard against that big cruiserweight on the cruise ship who'd done a bit of amateur boxing? Good record. And Ray said, don't take the piss, or I'll hit you right in the sweet spot.
Exactly. People don't understand. When you get to those levels, it's an absolute different beast altogether. It's another atmosphere.
It's like, you know, I wasn't bad, but when we were having banter one show, you said to me, you don't want to box me blind, never mind with one eye. That's what we're talking about, right? Levels.
Yeah. Yeah, more. I said that.
You did, because it was me and Gary. Remember when me and Gary were getting into it about we were going to
Yeah.
do? He was getting on my nerves or something, and I sort of asserted myself and said, "We can move around when you come here, Gary." And he started saying, "You." He was like, "You cheeky little bastard." He was basically thought, and he was like, "I'll tell you how that'll go." And then my ego rose, and I'm like, "We'll see, we'll see." And
Yeah.
then somehow you inserted yourself into it, and I said, "You can't get involved. You've only got one eye." And you said, "Let me tell you something. You don't want to box me blind."
Oh, if I was blind, even blind, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. You said even never mind one eye. You were like, Ben, if I had no eyes, it would still be.
That's funny, man. You've got a memory.
I have.
Your memory's better than my wife's.
Yeah, that's saying something.
That's saying a lot.
It's not.
She
Which
remembers.
to clarify, he said better than his wife's memory. He didn't say my memory is better than his wife in her entirety.
Oh no! My wife's memory, absolutely.
But
No, that's funny, hilarious.
so prediction time. I'm going
Yes.
Joshua by KO. I mean, we don't have to predict specifically, but I will do. I'm saying
Yeah.
Joshua by KO. I suspect it will happen in the first 6 rounds. That's where I'm at. How about you?
I'm saying middle distance. It may be a little, you know what I mean. Dubois got heart. He's not. He's been hurt before, and he's seen his way through it. You know what I mean? And you have to. I give him respect for that. It's a very hard thing. Like when you've been dropped or when you've been hurt, and to be able to come back and do that. I think when Joshua hits him, he's gonna have to make him like unconscious. You know what I mean? Because he's in shape. He's not the kind of kid that's gonna just stay down unless he.
Do you know though? Some people made a deal about him capitulating against Joe Joyce, right?
Yes.
Because of the
Yeah.
broken. They said he had a broken orbital socket.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, yeah, that's different. I mean, yeah, you're seeing things double at that point, and that's confusing. And a lot of guys are going to stop when that happens because they just feel like, what's the chance of? I've been in that situation before when you're seeing two guys, and it's confusing, and it's.
And you know the irony was at the time, Billy Joe Saunders, who was undefeated then, said that Dubois shouldn't have quit. He said, "Whatever it is, Warrior Code, get carried out that ring, brother. Don't quit."
Yeah.
And then
No,
obviously people, but when Billy Joe said that, obviously when he retired on the sword against Canelo with a similar injury, people were saying, "Well, that was karma," and that was relevant.
And that's the thing. Once you like that happened to him in the fight, and he's seeing double vision, it's almost like you have to be okay with the trauma of boxing. Those are the kinds of people that do best. They adapt to the trauma really fast, and of course, having double vision all of a sudden in a fight is a crazy thing to have to adapt to, but that's the nature of great fighters. And there are fighters that have had these issues and maybe even worse that we don't even fully know about. I mean, look at back in the days, like the days of Fritzy Zivic and Sugar Ray Robinson and Jake LaMotta and Rocky Graziano and Marciano, all this that kind of stuff. And we're not even talking about the top 10 fighters. We're talking about the fighters, every single one in boxing. They have these floating thumb gloves, and they have the horsehair gloves where the knuckles end up protruding after 3 rounds. And these guys are getting hit flush in the face with everything. And you can't tell me
they're fighting 15 rounders on a regular basis.
And they're fighting 15 rounds, and they're sparring with these kind of gloves too. And you can't tell me they're going into a fight 100%. There's absolutely no way.
Imagine that, because
they're going into fights with busted perforated eardrums, broken nose, contusions, concussions. Absolutely, they've been concussed going into a fight. Like a week before, 2 weeks before, they took a 10 count, and they're still going into a fight, and they're fighting because they don't, like today they have limitations. They'll tell you if this has happened, then that's not gonna that's not gonna watch.
What a trainer, the British Boxing Board of Control code is that if you're training a boxer for a professional contest and he gets knocked out in the gym, then he has to have a 28-day suspension, the same as they would give you happened in a
Yeah,
contest. So obviously,
absolutely.
if you're preparing for a fight, you've got to pull him out. But
Yeah.
interesting story. Lloyd Honeyghan was getting ready in 1985 for a European title challenge versus the Italian Gianfranco Rossi, right?
Yes.
And Lloyd got knocked spark out in the gym. I have it on very good authority from Jimmy Tibbs, who trained Lloyd. Never mind
Yeah.
all the other people who've confirmed it. He said he got knocked spark out by a kind of welterweight domestic contender called Dave Dent. I don't think Dave won any more than the Southern Area title. Lloyd, as you know, is undisputed welterweight champion of the world.
Yeah. But
Subsequently
he
became,
dented Lloyd.
yeah, but he certainly dented Lloyd, exactly. And he was on, so he was out comatose on the deck. And Terry Lawless, the supremo of the camp, went past, and he'd been out to get some like lunch or something. It was a gym in a place called the Royal Oak in Canning Town, in a very urban area. He probably went downstairs to get himself a bacon sandwich or something. Came back upstairs and he saw this prostrate form on the deck, and he said, "Who's that?" And Jimmy said, "Lloyd," and he was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake," because he's got a European title fight in 10 days. But they took a gamble. They went ahead with the fight, and Lloyd knocked Rossi out in 3 rounds in very impressive fashion. But obviously, because I remember when I did one of my first aid courses for the British Boxing Board of Control trainer license renewal, whatever, and they were saying, obviously, if your fighter gets knocked out in the gym and you've got a fight a couple of weeks time, you've got to pull him. And some guy, just a novice rookie enthusiastic guy, said, "Yeah, but I don't think you even need to explain that, do you? Any trainer worth his salt, no decent trainer would let him fight, would he?" I said, "Well, you know, I'm contrary as you." I'm like, "Well, I beg to differ." And I just told the story that I've just told you now, because you have to think objective. It's like situational ethics, isn't it?
Yeah, it really
You
is.
have to make a call. You might, if you were training a guy, you might take the gamble and take the fight, right? You'd have to make a call on it.
You have to make a call on it, and that is, you have to have that conversation with your fighter. And even though the fighter generally is always going to say, "Yes, it doesn't matter, I can do it," and that's just their nature. But it's, basically the brain has been shut down, and wow, I'm just thinking of all the instances myself when, obviously it's happened with guys I fought. It's happened to me. I've seen guys, it's happened to a lot of guys in the gym, and no one has ever pulled the plug on a fight
that you've ever
because
seen.
You got dropped. Never that I've ever seen because you got dropped in sparring. And people say, well, it doesn't have any really relevancy to the fight, but it does. If the fighter was being traumatized during that fight, then he's only going to have a certain amount of resiliency. His resiliency is going to be less than what it would have been had he not been, dropped in training going up to the fight. And then there's also the emotional part of it, like how you feel, confidently. You have to be extremely I don't even know whether it's like you have to be somewhat a certain level of ignorance to know that it's not going to affect you. And so it doesn't affect the fight. There are just so many aspects to it. And it all depends on the fighter's psychology. Some fighters are like, well, you're just going to have to kill me to do it anyway. It doesn't matter that they were knocked down. It doesn't mean you're going to knock me down, kind of thing. So it tells you a lot of different stories, like where that energy, where that ability is coming from, where, and guys that are, they've been, again, they're okay with the trauma because it's happened to them before. And they'll walk into a fight, and just because that fighter traumatized me, it doesn't mean this fighter is going to. You're going to have to prove it to me. And that's why,
So, So we're both on Joshua by stoppage. Right?
We're both on Joshua. And can you ask yourself right now, what is it that you really, really feel about Joshua that you think, is there anything you're holding back here? What makes you think so strongly that he's going to win? Because I look at both of their motor skills, and it's not like either one is
the thing that makes me think it was Dubois' vulnerability excessively to repeat right hands from Ergovic. I just think AJ, he is in a good place right now. He has the edge in big fight experience. He has the edge in skills. I think he has the edge in hand speed. Okay. I don't know who's a harder puncher, and I don't.
At that point, it doesn't matter. They both hit hard enough to do something. Right? Exactly. They both hit. If one hits the other on the chin, one of them is going to go down. If they land clean, whoever lands,
and they might both go down. People who like betting and they like looking for quirky bets, betting on both fighters to be knocked down might be, you can get good odds usually on that kind of thing. That might be a nice bet. There's ways of making money without picking winners. You know that. I told you a little while back, I made a few quid on betting the amount of punches that Canelo and Munguia would each land. They both had to land more than 150. And it felt like easy money, to be honest, on the night, as long as the fight goes a distance, which most Canelo fights do. But no, it was the vulnerability of Dubois that makes me feel. I feel that AJ has most of the important edges where one looks at it. The only edge I give Dubois is youth, if that's important, and the recent competition has been tougher. But as you said, that could be a double-edged sword. You rightly pointed out that doesn't give him an advantage necessarily. We can merely infer that he has had tougher competition recently.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
Okay, so my slight favorite in this is Joshua. He's not a huge favorite for me because I think, I'm just not confirmed yet in the thought that he's. I don't know how much I'm giving him just based on the Ngannou kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like he went out there and he deliberately did what he wanted to do and what he had to do, and that was absolutely perfect. If it were based on, if he didn't have that fight and it was just his other fights before then, including the Usyk fight, I'm not sure how much I'd give him. Like, so psychologically, his confidence, I don't think is there yet. I don't think that's 100, but I think his physicality is at 100 under his trainer. I think he's getting 100% out of him, and he's got Ben Davidson's confidence. He's got his full confidence, and I think that's going to play a serious thing. So as long as if he can get off first, he comes out with a good straight jab and keep everything long. Yeah, just keep everything long and straight and direct. He will. But if he gets into the point where, he's laying up against the ropes and he has to show specific skills to make this kid miss, to make Dubois miss, that might be a problem. Because with Dubois, if he's not getting hit, he feels it's because there's something he's doing, not because there's something Joshua's not doing. It's something he's doing, and that's going to give him more confidence and more reason to hit Joshua and get busy. And Joshua does not need to let this kid get ahead of confidence and start throwing at him, because neither one of them does this, turns, gets undershots, leans back. Neither one of them do that. So whoever gets off first is going to continue to get off, and I think I think Joshua can handle, if he comes out for real, lays down the lumber, lays down the law. It's a quick fight. It's a 4-rounder. But if it gets past 4 or 5 rounds, it's going to be an issue.
Okay. Now the thing about these Riyadh season cards, underwritten by Turki Al Sheikh, the new czar stroke savior of boxing, or some people are a little suspicious of that, but there we go. Is that they feature, the undercards are stacked, featuring fights that could be main events on lesser shows. So I appreciate, Silk, that you're not necessarily, because you're on this show as a brilliant boxing mind and a charismatic former world class contender who we all remember from the glorious 1980s. You don't claim to be an anorak or modern day expert on British boxing in and out. So I understand that you're not usually familiar with some of these names. So I only quickly, for the sake of our audience, I'd quickly like to touch on the other bouts, if I may. Yes. We've got Hamza Shiraz versus Tyler Denny. Tyler Denny was on the show one time with me and Gary when you were busy with whatever. He's a Commonwealth middleweight champion, one of them kind of Cinderella men who wasn't fancy to do anything special, and now found himself in this big position of prominence. I see him weighing in at Trafalgar Square today, saying, "God, man, this is great. I never thought I'd be here." Hamza Shiraz is the more fancied guy. You saw him fight Austin Ammo Williams on the 5 versus 5 card. Big, tall guy, right? Great, big, tall middleweight. Quite methodical. Like, think poor man's Alexis Arguello type approach.
Oh yeah. He didn't really show any dexterity in terms of his. He's like a lot of straight punches down the line. Tall, thin kid.
Absolutely, yes. Not a lot of flair, good power, and decent boxing ability. He's a hot prospect over here. I mean, he survived a moment against Ammo Williams. I believe it was the first round, or it was certainly in the first couple of rounds, when he got hit on the chin, knees properly buckled, and he sort of went with it, grabbed on, took the guy for a walk, and recovered, and then went on to win the fight. But quickly, as I don't want to go endlessly about the undercard because I know it's something that you're not hugely invested in. I think as much as I like Tyler Denny and he's a prince of a man, and it was lovely of him to come on the show, I think that Shiraz will beat him tomorrow night. So that's my pick. I'll make my official picks on this show. I pick Joshua. You can put some more in tomorrow as it pleases you in the WhatsApp group. I pick Joshua and I pick Shiraz. The other interesting fight is Joshua Buatsi versus Willie Hutchinson. Hutchinson upset the apple cart against Craig Richards, the fellow who took Dimitri Bivol the distance a couple of years ago. A London lad, black kid. Hutchinson beat him on the 5 versus 5 card. Hutchinson is a live wire, but I fancy. I just think Joshua Buatsi is a really decent, world class operator.
I've heard of him before, Buatsi.
Yeah. I fancy him to. I'll feed you some videos over the weekend, so you've got a little bit of time to put some predictions in. But the thing is, it could be a poison chalice for me, though, Silk. If you pick Joshua and you're right, and I make a bunch of picks wrong, I just get more losses. You may be fireproof by not partaking, so you have to be like a gambler at this point, decide whether you even want to play, because you may be losing points that I could get, but if I get them wrong and you just don't commit, that could be. Do you know what I mean? It could be to your advantage. So it's up to you what you do. We will discuss that tomorrow before the first bell rings on the card. But what was I going to say? Yes, I fancy I fancy Buatsi. So my 3 picks, which I'm confident on, are Joshua, Shiraz, and Buatsi. Okay. Whether I'm going to pick on the other 3, I will detail them for the sake of the audience. So you've got Josh Warrington versus Anthony Kakachi. Josh Warrington, by the way, lost his last 2 fights. It was supposed to be for the IBF title, which was newly won by Kakachi in his last bout against Joe Cordina, who was supposed to fight Shakur Stevenson October 12th, but Stevenson's got an injured hand, okay? It's complicated, but stay with me. So now, Warrington was supposed to be challenging Kakachi for the IBF belt, but guess what? On fight week, the IBF said they're not going to sanction him as a challenger. They waited until then to say, you know what, he's coming off 2 losses, he's not in our top 10, we're not sanctioning this fight. But if Warrington wins tomorrow, then the title will be declared vacant. Kakachi can lose it, but Warrington can't win it. As a former 2-time IBF champion himself.
That doesn't make any sense. The fighter who's fighting for it, if he doesn't beat the fighter who's fighting for the title, then
it's not for the title. They're saying they're not sanctioning it. So they said if he loses, he's lost at the weight, the champion, if he loses, so they'll take the title off him. But they say the other guy's not getting it.
And do what with it? It doesn't even make any sense. It's not even how Rocky is.
Do you know when I first heard that? It was Marvis Fraser versus Larry Holmes. The WBC initially, I mean, all right, very soon afterwards they stripped Holmes of the title, and then the IBF gave him their fledgling title, and then it started to feed into the madness that we know and love today. But they said initially they would not sanction Marvis Fraser as a challenger because he was not in the top 10, and they said if Holmes were to lose the fight, then the title would become vacant. That's the first time I heard it. Age 13, I heard of that logic.
Yeah. Oh, it's not really logical.
I understand it to a degree that they're saying no, this is a non-title fight, but if you get beat at the weight, then we take the title away from you.
I mean, it's kind of spoiled in that. When I say spoiled, I mean that the council, the governing body, would say, well, we're not sanctioning this as a title fight, but if you lose the fight, we're taking it away from you because you can't be our champion if you can't beat this guy. And
you know the way they'd always make non-title fights slightly over the weight? The reason they would do that is because you couldn't forfeit the title. Like when Ray Robinson would have all those non-title fights, and the old guys, even Ray Mancini had non-title fights when he's a reigning WBA lightweight champion in the 80s. Then it kind of went out of fashion.
What happened was they didn't always defend their title. So some guys, they would fight them 10 rounders. Like they'd be world champion and you fight the guy 10 rounds or 12 rounds. It wasn't a 15-round world title fight.
That's what I'm telling you. They had non-title fights, but you know what? They had them over the weight. They would not weigh championship weight because technically they could be stripped of the title if they lost at the weight. That was always the rule, and it goes back to the Lonsdale belt in England, starting in 1909. That's why they came in over the weight, Silk. Because otherwise the title was at risk.
I mean, I can't say that I'm sure that back in the 50s or 60s when they do that, and even in the
honestly,
70s,
that's what it was. Trust me.
When they had, so you're saying when they had title fights, it wasn't a title fight, but when a guy fought and
a non-title fight, if he got beaten at the weight, he could lose the title. So that's why they would come in a couple of pounds over. So they couldn't. So the title was safe. Even do you know Joe Louis? Right, he had 25 title defenses. Everybody says yes.
Yeah.
Do you know, you could argue he had 26 because he boxed an exhibition in between. The only official activity, according to BoxRec, in those war years was he boxed an exhibition. It was supposed to be an exhibition against a guy called Johnny Davis, okay? And it was only a 4-rounder. But the New York State Athletic Commission would not allow exhibitions, and they said Lewis's title was at stake. It had to be, even though it was only a 4-rounder. I know it's absurd. So Lewis knocked the exhibition opponent out in the first round just to risk a silly Mickey Mouse decision going against him after 4 rounds. So some people, if you want to get an anorak, points in a trivia thing or in a barbershop, say technically speaking, Joe Louis had 26 defenses. Who was the other one against? And it's Johnny Davis. So
and like Ali and Ali versus Alzado and different things. I guess.
Well, yeah.
He boxed Lyle Alzado, who was a football player, right?
I remember that. Yeah, in the late 70s. But that's what I'm saying to you. They never wanted to be beaten at the weight because being beaten at the weight could forfeit your laurels. That's been a long established tradition in boxing. Getting back to tomorrow, Josh Warrington cannot win that title. But guess what? He's also the IBO champion, this Kakachi fella. So the IBO is the title they're running with tomorrow. Because heaven forbid it could be, wouldn't be for some kind of piece of hardware, right?
Yeah. It's people have inserted themselves into this business that don't have, we know it. They don't have boxing's best interests in mind. They really don't care. And everyone, and rightfully so, everyone has their own opinion. I guess you can create your own world. And when you create your own world, you can create your own world champion. You know what I mean? And it's limitless. There can be anybody with, I guess, I don't know, what do you have to do to become a governing body? What is it you have to be able to do?
In theory, we could start one tomorrow.
Exactly. We could start our own and absolutely anybody on the planet can. Then you get somebody relevant, and eventually you get someone relevant to fight for that title, and that legitimizes everything, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's nonsense. We know it's nonsense. And like I say, one more time, I would like to hear this from you. Who is the heavyweight champion of the world? It's Alexander Usyk, right? But quickly, that's covered Warrington, Kakache. So we got Joshua Dubois. You have Hamza Shiraz versus Tyler Denny. You have Boatsi versus Hutchinson. You have Warrington versus Kakache. You have Josh Kelly, pretty boy Josh Kelly, against the late substitute Ishmael Davis. He was supposed to fight Liam Smith. Remember the guy who lost to Eubank last time? And the guy whose trainer, Chris Eubank, whose trainer had the gun in his luggage and all that. Remember that whole kind of carry on?
Chris Eubanks. Oh, yeah. The kid.
Bomac had the gun.
Yeah.
Okay, so Liam Smith pulled out the fight. Because he had a virus or whatever. So Ishmael Davis has come in at a week's notice. I'm not making an official prediction, but I actually fancy Davis to upset the apple cart against Josh Pretty Boy Kelly, in actual fact. And I must confess, I'm not too bothered. I don't have a strong opinion on Mark Chamberlain versus Josh Pedley. All I know about Mark Chamberlain, which is the lesser of the 6 fights, okay? What I do know is Turkey Al Sheikh really likes him. Apparently, he said his favourite fighter is Mark Chamberlain or something like that. That's why he's been on these Riyadh season cards. Like I believe he was on 5 versus 5. He may have been on, or he was on the Day of Reckoning, or he might have been on Joshua Ngannou.
But when he says he likes him because of his, there's a personality, like they gel.
He likes his fighting style, I think.
He likes his fighting style, and that fighting style has it reflects Turkey Al Sheikh's nature, I guess, or what he wants to be thought of as. Maybe is he a fighter that shows heart or shows intelligence, power? Like, what is it about him?
You'd have to ask him because I haven't seen him even fight a whole lot of times.
You've never seen him fight, okay.
I don't recall anything strong about Mark Chamberlain. Obviously, I should probably have more of a look. Otherwise, I'm in danger of sounding like you, being like, "Oh, who is this guy?" But so I'm not going to pick on that one. So I've made 3 picks officially on the show, which you can hold me to: Joshua, Shiraz, and Boise.
Boise.
I may put some more, one or two more in the WhatsApp group, as you may do tomorrow. Gary Stretch, by the way, is in London right now, but he's been very busy with some other things, so we haven't seen a whole lot of him. I was hoping we could get some content done this week. I was hoping we might be able to hook up with Chris Eubank Sr., his old opponent, who he's recently been in touch with, and do a long piece. It hasn't happened yet, but Gary's going to be around, I believe, for a few more days, so maybe he will join us on Sunday. Unless there was anything else we're coming right up to the right bang on the hour, Mr. Olajide. Unless there was anything you wish to add, we could cut this one.
No, I'm going to wait until you say goodbye. And as you're in the middle of your goodbye,
You're going to
then
say
I'll have
something,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. There's a little comment from Saj Ali here that I'm only saying it because I know what Silk's like, so that's why I'm kind of keeping him guessing. I'm closing while I'm putting a question on because I don't know what he's going to do and he don't know what I'm going to do. Willie Hutchinson was seeing himself as some sort of the greatest light heavyweight ever. Well, that statement doesn't make sense to me, Sarge. Willie Hutchinson was seeing himself as some sort of the greatest light heavyweight ever. That is typically quirky in the style of Sarge Ali, and I do not know precisely what he means. Even the way it's worded is quirky. Guys, thanks for tuning in. We're quirky. You must be to watch us. We are Sugar, Silk, and Stretch, minus a stretch this week. But regardless, accept no substitutes. Peace.
Ciao.